of GitHub Universe 2020. Like I said, my name is Marcus. I'm an account executive here at GitHub. And so today, me and my team at the back end will be showing you through some of the best clips that we had through our December conference. So the first clip that will be showing you it's our keynote from our CEO, Nat Friedman. And over the course of today's meeting, you will see a bunch of product highlights that we launched during our Universe event. So please stay tuned and let me know where you guys are watching from. What are you from, Kenya or South Africa? Just let me know in the chat where you guys are watching from. So let's get started without much ado. Let's AJ, are you ready? Let's see the keynote from Nat Friedman.
Good morning. Welcome to GitHub Universe. Today we are going to walk you through how we use GitHub at GitHub and along the way show you some of the really cool new features we've been building. Let's check it out. I start my morning with the GitHub mobile app. I check out my notifications and I catch up with my favorite communities. GitHub Discussions makes this so easy. We announced it a few months ago as a great place for Q&A and open-ended conversations, and today we're announcing that every open source community can try GitHub Discussions with our new public beta. Just head to your repo settings and turn it on right now. We've learned a ton from the communities that have already been using Discussions, and we've added some great new features like customizable categories and native support in our mobile apps. It's awesome.
With GitHub Mobile, not only do I get push notifications for things like comments, but I can keep working on any of my repositories no matter where I am. Let's jump to Nea's pull request and take a look. With UI changes like this, sometimes it's hard to know if everything's working just by looking at the diff. Sometimes I actually need to run the app to see the changes. This calls for a code space. GitHub Codespaces gives me a complete dev environment right in my browser, even on an iPad. It's like an infinite dev box configured in code, just how you need it. And since Codespaces is built on top of Visual Studio Code, it gives us a fully featured editor right in my browser, complete with built-in terminal access and shell access.
Tens of millions of developers use GitHub, but so do hundreds of thousands of companies, including some of the biggest in the world. For those users, we've been hard at work adding all the new features you saw today to GitHub Enterprise Server. So you get all the power of the best teams in the world running on your company's network. That includes GitHub Actions, packages, code scanning, and support for the native GitHub mobile apps. All of this is available in a major new release we call GitHub Enterprise Server 3.0. This is the biggest release we've done of GitHub Enterprise Server in years.
All right, hope you enjoyed that. So that was our CEO, Nat Friedman, talking through his keynote. So the next topic we'll be talking through is accelerating software development with GitHub Enterprise. So basically, like you were hearing Nat talking about just now, we released GitHub Enterprise 3.0. So in addition, within that release, we had updates on GitHub packages, GitHub Actions, code scanning, secret scanning. We also released our iOS mobile and Android apps. So let's dive into the next section. It's accelerating software development with GitHub Enterprise.
So myself and my colleagues spend a lot of time talking to administrators, people like Keith, who run DevOps tooling for their companies. And we know that you've got a lot to do, and it's pretty hard sometimes. You have to secure all your software and your applications across the supply chain. You need to help your teams to automate workflows so they can focus on what they do best. You need to try and build a culture of collaboration, virtual teams, communities of practice to help swarm around new ideas and products that you want to launch. And of course, you need to make sure that all of the tools you're responsible for are available, secure, and governed. At GitHub, we have one underlying philosophy for how we help companies, big and small, to achieve goals like these. And that is to empower developers with an integrated platform. And in this talk, I'm going to talk to you about how you can use some of the capabilities in GitHub Enterprise to achieve goals like that. But first of all, what are those capabilities? So those capabilities sit across 4 core pillars: coding, automation, security, and planning. And all of those sit on our kind of secure enterprise foundation that allows administrators to secure your code and access to it and to govern it through policies. It also enables you to build a community and crucially tap into the power of that github.com community. And I'm extremely pleased to say that all of these capabilities are now coming to Enterprise Server, to our thousands of customers running GitHub Enterprise in their own environments. Our Enterprise Server includes GitHub Actions, packages, advanced security code scanning and secret scanning, and also comes with support for our iOS and Android apps. As I mentioned, one of the big things that we've been working on this year is to add Git events to the Enterprise Cloud audit log, and I'm just going to show you briefly how that works. So first of all, many of our customers like to query the audit log through the API. So we can do that here. Just a quick example. Here, I'm just querying only Git events from my enterprise, and you can see it's bringing up Git fetch events, Git clone, and Git push events from across the enterprise. I can query both Git and GitHub events at the same time if you want to, or just one or the other. You can also export those Git events just here and your GitHub events. Next year, we'll be adding those Git events to this UI as well. Just want to touch briefly on some branch protection rules and how we're extending them. You might have seen a little bit of this in the keynote if you managed to watch it. So here I have a couple of branch protection rules set up, which means that any code changes need to be reviewed, first of all, by a third party, and then by my code owners, normally often a security or expert team, before they're merged in. GitHub has also recently expanded the same concept to environment protection rules. So if you're using GitHub Actions for your CI/CD flows, you can put in checks on environment deployments. Just have a quick look at that. Here I have another repo. It's set up with these environments, and my production environment has a environment protection rule, again saying that I need to have a couple of reviewers. Jump over to Actions. We can see a pull request that has been merged in and then deployed through my environments. And as per my rule, it has been approved by me. This is one of the biggest things that we've shipped in the last few months. And in this vein, we're now announcing a new change to how we release Enterprise Server. So from Enterprise Server 3.0, we will start every feature release with a release candidate build. That's a build that's gone through full GitHub testing, but one that we're putting out there for you to pick up, test, try, bash around, and give us feedback on. And when we're happy based on your feedback that it is a very stable release, we'll GA it. I think this is going to make a big difference to the overall reliability of the product, and I'm excited for this change. So GitHub has really built the community standard for automation with GitHub Actions. Sure, you will have seen this before, but Actions is the #1 CI tool on github.com, and it's achieved that status in just a year after launching. And we now have 6,000 actions on the marketplace, which I just think is an amazing testament to how easy it is for developers to build actions. Now, our security capabilities have grown massively over the last year. Advanced Security offers both code scanning and secret scanning, which are automated security scanning tools. And in addition to that, our dependency alerts, automated security fixes, and the advisory database are making sure that both private and open source repos are staying secure.
All right. I hope you had a good time with that section. So my favorite part of that section is really bringing GitHub Actions to the server, bringing GitHub Actions to GitHub Enterprise server. That has been in the works for a long time. So I'm really excited that has finally come to GitHub Enterprise server. Okay, so the next clip is our GitHub Codespaces launch. GitHub Codespaces basically lets you write your code on GitHub right in the browser. So I'm really excited about this. Like I've been talking to a lot of engineers that are pretty excited about GitHub Codespaces. So ideally, the whole point is to make sure that you have a full-fledged IDE in the browser. So that's the goal of GitHub Codespaces. So let's dive right in. AJ.
Hi everyone, I'm Bailey. I'm here with Matthew and we're both product managers on GitHub Codespaces. Earlier this year, we announced GitHub Codespaces at Satellite, and the excitement from the community was overwhelming to say the least. It was amazing just how excited the community was to be able to have a cloud dev environment, so you can go from a repo on github.com to a running Codespace within seconds without any setup or configuration. GitHub Codespaces are instant cloud developer environments. Codespaces provide you with a machine you can access through a browser or your IDE where you can write, run, debug, test, commit, and push your code from, which leads us to an important question. Why should anyone care? There's a lot of hardware out there. You're watching this on a machine that you can potentially write code on. So what is so special about Codespaces? The goal for most of us is to write great code that ships value to our customers, the open source community, ourselves, whoever that audience is. The goal is not to spend your time doing local dev environment management. Although it can consume a lot of your time and it may not be your job, your company might have a person or a team where this is such a problem that it's become their job. And hopefully you're not managing Python 2.7 anymore that's been end of life. But it's just an example to say, let's write great code and be able to write it fast. Writing great code should be about doing just that, and not the periphery of machine management that surrounds it.
The way we get to Codespaces is right from this page. We can go to the code button, and right inside this dropdown, we can open this project inside of a Codespace. So let's go ahead and do that and talk about what's happening and what that offers us for this project. So I've created this Codespace. I was using it pretty recently, and I'm going to jump in and just resume an existing Codespace. So you'll see we connect here, and we land in what feels and really is VS Code, and it's VS Code in the browser. And for me personally, this feels a lot like home. And the reason is because I use the GitHub Dark theme, and this is using the GitHub Dark theme. But if I had another theme, I could have that set up and synced across my Codespaces as well. You can see I have my custom bash prompt here, and my dot files are synced over automatically. So I really have everything that makes this feel like I'm developing locally. You'll even see there are some extensions that aren't standard here, that don't come automatically out of the box. So I'm also able to bring in the extensions that I'm used to, that I like to work with, and use them all inside of the browser for this Codespace. I have an editor in the cloud. It is VS Code, but it's not just an editor, right? It's a full cloud developer environment. So what that means is we can go to the terminal here, and we can go ahead and run our app. And you'll see our app ran. It says it's running on localhost 3000. And you'll see I got this toast that says my service is running on port 3000 and it's available. So let's go ahead and open this in the browser. So what's going to happen here is we're going to connect to a forwarded port from this Codespace, and it's going to load our app. So you'll see I have this app called Haikus for Mona. And we have some of those octocats that Martin was just talking about. And I have little haikus that we've written about some of these octocats. And this is really cool. I'm running a Node app. It has a Postgres database backing it. It's not super complex, but I'm able to get the full app running with a container for my web service and with a container for my database. I can interact with it. I can do everything I would do to build this app locally, and that port is just forwarded on securely to me. But we also, again, have VS Code here, so we can do more than just run our app. We can debug our app. So let's go ahead and run this app with our debugger attached. So you'll see we have the app, our port 3000 is forwarded again. And what we're gonna do here is let's just set a breakpoint. So I'm gonna create a little bit more space here. And as I said, this is a pretty basic Node Express app. And we have some endpoints that are defined here. And we have this endpoint for the heart experience. So I can go ahead and heart something and like it, and the counter goes up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a breakpoint right here. And we can jump right back into our code or our live running app. I'm going to go ahead and click this heart button. And you'll see up here, we hit our breakpoint. So we can jump over here. We can actually look at the stack. We can look at the request that came in here. We can step through this function. This is super powerful. I'm able to, run a full debugger of my app in the browser. But I also like to spend a lot of my time using VS Code locally. And I want to go from VS Code and connect to my code space. And I can do just that. So let's go to VS Code. And I'm actually going to go to the Remote Explorer. And I've installed the Codespaces extension. And what I'm able to do from here is I can connect to this code space from VS Code. So what's going to happen here is this is going to take a second. It's going to set up our connection. And then we're going to have our entire code space in just the state that it was, right? Because we're connected to that remote machine. So you can see my changes are here. And I can go ahead and if we want to make our commits from here, updates for live demo, we can go ahead and make our changes. Everything looks good. And let's go ahead and push them. So I'm going to go ahead and push. And now our changes are back on our repo. So if I go back to the web, we can see this full end-to-end. I'm going to use the command line with this nifty little trick to go back to the repo. And you'll see updates for live demo. Here's our commit. You'll see that it kicked off GitHub Actions. So it's now running my tests. And we did all of this from the code space.
All right. How did that look to you? Have you tried GitHub Codespaces already? Do you know you can actually go get access right now? So if you haven't tried GitHub Codespaces at all, go to github.com/features/codespaces and you can sign up for the early access. So I love Codespaces. Developers are pretty excited about it, so definitely go check it out and sign up for it, and let me know in the comment section if you've tried Codespaces before. All right, so the next clip is about GitHub Actions continuous delivery with GitHub Actions. Chris Patterson, one of our senior engineer leaders here, will go take you through GitHub Actions, and you will see integrated activity log visually tracking progress of complex workflow. So let's dive in again.
GitHub Actions is grown massively. Right now, we run about 75 million jobs. The slide says 73, but when I looked this morning, it's about 75 million different jobs a month across a wide variety of workloads. CI is probably the most common thing that people absolutely automate. But the amazing growth has really come, I think, due to the community. And if we look across sort of all of the different CIs that happen on GitHub, we definitely believe Actions is by far the number one. We seem to do the most, at least from what we can see. We actually see closer to 10,000 different actions used across different organizations. And we think that's pretty incredible because that means people are both using the community, but also taking advantage of using actions within their own organizations. What we implemented was protected environments. And the idea here is we wanted to prevent unauthorized deployments. And in order to think about how that might work with GitHub Actions, in fact, you've seen this on the roadmap. If you looked at our public roadmap, we have something called manual approvals. So this is configured on your repo settings outside of the workflow. And when you try to deploy to a given environment, if a set of reviewers is required, the system will pause that job before it ever goes to a runner and send out a series of notifications and require a person in this list or somebody in a team to come and say it's okay for that job to continue to deploy to that environment. We heard from a lot of people that they want to be able to track what is currently in a particular environment, whether that environment is production or if that environment is a staging or whatever. Starting to build this new activity log here is part of our goal to really move in that direction. And this is kind of where this kind of 4-ish new capabilities comes in, because this deployments view actually exists in GitHub today. It just isn't very commonly used because it's a little bit hard to make it show up. And so we took some of the existing platform in GitHub and integrated directly into Actions to make it easy for you to get this list of deployments. We wanted to give you a much better way to visually track how your workflows are progressing. As you have these more complex workflows, particularly ones that do sort of pipeline style deployments to different environments, or maybe have rich matrices or other concepts, having the ability to see where those go and sort of track their progress at this very visual level, we think improves just the overall usability of Actions, the usability of more complex workflows, and the ability to debug potential issues. And we've also started to do some other work to integrate in other places. I think you saw in the keynote, Nat had a really neat little vignette at the end where he launched dark mode, and you saw sort of a sneak preview of some work we're doing with the mobile app. We've also done a lot of work with the team who works on the Slack integration to integrate those there, and you'll start to see these roll out again. And we think that as we use all of these endpoints for GitHub, we can really help drive that culture of rapid deployment and unblocking your team from where you are exactly how you need to. We think that all those things together really do add up to the ability to do very, very rich continuous delivery workflows with GitHub Actions. We have a lot of plans to enhance this capability in the future. For example, the protection rules for environments, we really see that as a great potential point for integration.
All right. How was that? Let me know if you've used GitHub Actions before, if you've tried out before. So basically, you just saw how we do. You can do continuous integration with GitHub Actions. So now my other colleague, Brian Doogie, is going to show you how to actually use GitHub Actions, how to gain traction with GitHub Actions. So let's dive in.
I think what a lot of people kind of think of GitHub Actions as is CI. And I even saw this in Twitter, hashtag GitHub Universe. Check out the Twitter feed there. Someone brought up with the continuous delivery features, like what does that mean for continuous integration? And I think they're sort of conflating everything into one, which is fine because that's what GitHub Actions is. And if you zoom back a bit, it's all about workflow automation, automating yourself to get back to the code. And I bring this up because when Jason Warner stood on stage a couple years ago at GitHub Universe, he presented Actions as a feature for developers to get back to what they want to do. So if you're constantly doing all this tedious checking in, like hitting up Slack, telling your coworkers to review your PRs, like you could automate all that stuff. And the beauty of this is that GitHub Actions basically gets you back to what you want to do, which is write code. One other thing that I also added too in my workflow is adding Lighthouse. Now, Jake Jarvis actually, he has this Lighthouse action, and the one thing that I do for my deployments is I deploy it to Netlify. And the reason why I chose this is that every time there's a Netlify deploy preview on my project, which is open source, I actually get an entire preview directly linked inside of my pull request, which is beautiful because I've been using this other action I built called Logify, which also brings my previews into the deployment logs first and foremost. I don't have an example about this in CD yet because it just launched yesterday.
But what I like about this is that I get lighthouse scores every time I open a PR. So if I have a PR from someone else, because this is an open source project, anybody else in the community, I actually can find out if I have like a degradation of my lighthouse score or performance or accessibility right there in line with the PR. And when I talk about sort of identifying a repetitive task, every time I open up a pull request, I want to make sure accessibility and performance do not go down. I want them to stay consistent or get better. So I bring that up because with the Lighthouse action, I can actually embed those Lighthouse scores within my action logs. So that way, not only in my action logs, but also in the PR comments. And it's all powered from this one action, which is beautiful. And like, you're probably thinking, you know, Lighthouse is already embedded in Chrome. Like, you can just open up the Chrome tab and like just know what you're doing and check that before you merge a PR. And the thing is, I won't do that. I won't do that for anybody's PRs. I want this to be automated and get myself back to writing my own code and not have to do that for every time a PR is open up on my project. So I bring this up. Shout out to the artifacts too as well, like actually having the report in line inside of my logs as well. It's just a beautiful experience.
How was that? Did you enjoy that? So the core thing about GitHub Actions is not just CI/CD. You can automate repetitive tasks. So like Brian was saying, there's a lot of actions already been built by developers on GitHub, over 6,000 actions now. So definitely go in there and you know, pick and choose what you want to use. So the next thing, you know, continue on the product features team is talking about GitHub discussions, building your community with GitHub discussion. So let's dive in a little bit.
I'm really excited about talking about building your community with GitHub Discussions, which as of Tuesday is available for all repos in public beta. And so thousands of you have turned it on since then. I want to quickly talk about the open source ecosystem and why GitHub Discussions exists in the first place. So this is an incredibly oversimplified cycle of what open source work looks like on GitHub. So basically people use a feature, tool, or product, then they notice an issue, they file an issue, and that work will hopefully get prioritized, maybe worked on. Someone will open up a pull request, it'll get merged, and boom, it's slated for a new release and it goes out into the world and people use the new thing. So already there's something missing, and that is where the conversation lives. And that's because it usually lives over here. Outside of the cycle, products ignite ideas and facilitate conversations, and that conversation ends up in chat applications, forums, social news, and basically sometimes GitHub issues. We want to keep Q&A and conversations separate from GitHub issues, but we also don't want those to be completely detached either. Their relationship is important. So you can think of GitHub discussions as the living room of your open source community. If you haven't enabled discussions yet, I'm going to show you how now. So to start, you're going to want to go to your repos settings page, and then you can go on that default page, scroll down to the features section, and you'll see a discussions checkbox waiting for you. And it looks like this. So you can click on set up discussions to get started, and this is going to take you to a pre-made template that we've set up for you. Click on pin discussion, and there you have it on your index page, your first discussion. Now, if you have issues that should be discussions, you can cover those individually, convert them or in bulk. So if you wanted to do it in bulk, you can go here to the label section. Here we selected the question label. Obviously, probably the best one for that is the Q&A category. And there you go. All you have to do is click that button, and you're going to convert those from your issues over to your discussions. And you can see that over on your discussions page. Every repository comes with a default set of 4 categories: general, ideas, Q&A, and show and tell. But these can be modified. I think the most important thing about categories is that you get to set the tone here to help the community know what to expect and where to go. Let's get directly into the mechanics of marking an answer. So anyone with Triage Plus access or the author can do this. And this is kind of what it looks like. When you find an answer to a question, you can click on the checkbox and a gray box will appear, and you can say who marked the answer, and it'll be recorded, so you can even see who marked it right underneath. Now we have all the tools that we need to manage existing discussions. Let's talk really briefly about some enhancements we have to improve the community's interactions. And first things first, you can see right here, there's a leaderboard on the right-hand side, and it shows people with the most answered discussions. Finally, I wanted to briefly talk to you about what you can do with triager, write, maintainer, and admin permissions. And as far as discussions go, people with write, maintain, admin access can basically do the same thing with 2 exceptions. So people with maintain and admin access can enable discussions altogether from the settings page, and also they're the only ones who can create and edit categories, but otherwise they have the same permissions. And that's basically it. That's what you have. So we talked about getting started, categories, new discussions, marking answers, how you can use the information on the site to provide recognition, and how to moderate and keep the community healthy. So here's an example here where Snowpack has used a pin discussion as their change log. And so it's kind of pinned at the top. You can see that Fred's got some spot on GIFs here. And what I love is that each comment is a new version, and it details, and it allows people to easily reply with thoughts or words of thank or encouragement.
All right, thanks for that. So the next, we've been talking about a lot of topics, product features on GitHub.com and GitHub Enterprise. So we want to transition now to security, how we're thinking about security at GitHub, and how you should think about security on your own projects too. So to kick us off on that is Erica Brescia. Erica is our Chief Operating Officer here at GitHub. So let's get into GitHub Enterprise and security.
GitHub is where the world builds software. Over 50 million developers trust GitHub to collaborate, test, build, and deploy code, including over 70% of the Fortune 50. In fact, in the last year, over 60 million new repos were added and over 1.9 billion contributions were made. Those are some seriously big numbers. The stability and resilience of our global platform is critical to providing developers with a platform they can count on. GitHub Enterprise is built on the same principles as GitHub.com, and as a result, benefits from the years we've spent optimizing the platform to be trusted, reliable, and resilient. From day one, we've focused on building great products and experiences for the developers who spend their days or their nights on GitHub. From pull requests to code spaces, actions to CodeQL, and everything in between, our vision is to build the home for all developers, whether they're working on a fun side project or building mission-critical software for Fortune 500. Across all open source repositories, repos that use actions on pull requests see PRs merge 1.2 times faster, and the number of merged PRs increased by 1.3x. That's 34% more pull requests merged. This is huge in terms of improving developer velocity.
All right, so let's say you've committed a secret in your code before. So how do you deal with that? So in our next section, our senior product manager, Sasha Rosenbaum, will talk to you through how we are dealing with that at GitHub, and specifically how we're dealing with secrets, managing secret scanning here at GitHub. So let's dive in and see.
We're going to talk about the state of security today. So my favorite analogy for this is imagine that you just built your most amazing favorite mansion and you have just installed all the most expensive furniture and all the most expensive appliances, and you just forgot to install doors. So this is sort of how we treat security today. We just kind of say, okay, we have time for this. We're just going to first deliver on all of the features, and then we're going to basically add some locks on the doors and some doors to our mansion, right? Because features is what's important. If we look at the chart of how we deliver code, then we actually see that the more lines of code we write, the more security threats we actually introduce. And so we don't learn from our mistakes. We just basically continue committing bugs and moving on and just like committing secrets, committing security vulnerabilities into our main code base. And despite that, as developers, we often treat it this way. So we just basically say, okay, it works in dev, so it's a security problem now, right? So I have developed my code, I committed all my stuff, and now I can just get and ship it to security, and then security is going to fix it all for me. But we know that that's not possible because there's so many more developers than security professionals. Basically, we have about 45 million estimated developers and only 70,000 estimated security researchers in the world. So today, I'm going to basically talk about how GitHub can help you fix your security issues for you. So we have a large number of features in GitHub Advanced Security that can help you integrate security into your developer experience. So it's not extraneous to what you do, but rather it's shifted all the way left and integrated into your development lifecycle. So basically, we help you secure multiple parts of your code. So we help you secure the supply chain, the code, the development lifecycle, and of course, your platform. But today, I'm going to talk specifically about the code part. So we can see that almost 50% of all the breaches in the world actually include stolen credentials. And yet, we're pretty bad about not committing these credentials or these secrets into source control repositories. And this is where secret scanning actually comes in. So we have different oriented features for public and private repos. So I'm going to start with public repos. For public repos, we actually have secret scanning for a number of years already, and we are doing it at massive scale. We're scanning about 150 million pushes a week. So basically every push into a public repo basically gets scanned by GitHub to identify secrets. And many people don't know that it's happening because it's transparent to you. If you as a user check in your code and that code actually contains a secret, so we actually run different regular expressions from known secret scanning partners to identify if something you committed actually matches one of these secrets. So basically, we then send the matches to a partner verify endpoint, and then the partner can verify if it's a real secret or if it's not. And then depending on what the partner wants to do with this, sometimes they revoke the secret, and sometimes they also email the user, right? So basically, we have this process in which completely transparent to the user in some cases, your secret actually gets revoked by the partner, and so your secret is no longer in the repository. So if you say committed an AWS secret into your repository, then instead of someone stealing your credentials, we're actually probably going to revoke it for you.
All right. How was that? I know developers like to build really cool stuff. So I really loved the analogy that Sasha gave, how you build a beautiful mansion and you forget to put in doors. So please don't forget to put in doors in your code. So the next topic is by Bas and Xavier. Let's dive right in. Let's go.
So, GitHub code scanning. Earlier this year we announced it, and code scanning does exactly what it says on the tin. It scans your code for security vulnerabilities. And any alerts we find in pull requests are automatically flagged up to you so that you can fix them before you merge the code changes into your main branch. That particular code patterns could be, for example, a server-side template injection vulnerability. When you run CodeQL, whether that's in code scanning or on your own local machine, the first thing it will do is it extracts all of the source code that you have into a special relational database. In a way, it's similar to a MySQL or a Postgres database. It's a very special one, though, a special purpose-built read-only one. We call it a CodeQL database. And just like with MySQL and with Postgres, you can run queries against that database. And in fact, a CodeQL query looks a bit like a SQL query, but it's a lot more powerful. I'll show you one in the live demo that I've got. Now, a CodeQL query is a way to sort of interrogate and explore your source code. A very simple query might, for example, look for a variable called password that you then write to a plain text log file. More advanced security analysis, more advanced queries do very intricate flow analysis. They track where user-controlled data enters your application. They track it through your application, through function calls and data structures, to a location where it might be used in an unsafe way. And the SSTI analysis does exactly that. It tracks untrusted user data, but eventually ends up in a template. Now, in a way, every query captures the security knowledge of a security researcher. And by codifying that knowledge, we can apply it at a massive scale. So for example, we run KQL against hundreds of thousands of repositories, and every single query result that we get is an alert in code scanning.
All right, so secret scanning, code scanning, that's part of our advanced security product. And do you know that all of that is available free for open source work? So if you're working on the project, you can definitely turn on secret scanning and code scanning and code QL for your project, right? So let's dive deeper now into security as a feature. So one of our customers here, Thermo Fisher, would go through how they are using code security and advanced security at their company. So let's dive in, AJ.
We're going to be going through a few different ideas in this concept in terms of why companies might not think of security as a feature, of course what they do think of as a feature first, and then going into what happens when they don't. But also, of course, some of the good things that can come from thinking of security like a feature, going ahead and then how you can implement that within your tool chain or your process, some further learning, and we'll take it from there. So let's go ahead and dive right in. What makes something a feature, right? That's something that is often discussed in concerning the project management or product management team, the dev teams. They always say, well, that's not really a feature. Security's not a feature. And that's because, of course, features are things that customers ask you for, right? They're the things that people want to see, the things that people will complain about if they don't have it in your application, and so therefore they'll tell you about it. Then, of course, there's resources in terms of people, time, or money. Those are things that get allocated to features. Whatever you're allocating your people, your money, and your time to, those are the features you're working on, whether you're calling them a feature or not. And then features, well, generally speaking, if you build it, you're going to make sure that it's regularly tested. You're going to make sure that it works the way that you want it to, and you're going to make sure that it continues to get enhanced over time. Generally speaking, you're not going to take a feature out unless, of course, it's just really not used or it's so totally broken that it's not worth continuing and working on. But otherwise, you're going to make that thing better. Those are the features that your company is investing in. So why isn't security considered a feature? And this is kind of an interesting topic because one of the things that I'll often ask dev teams after they've done some security review of their applications is I'll say, do you have a banking app on your phone? Now, that doesn't always translate depending on where you are in the world. Some cash-heavy cultures don't really use banking applications, might do e-commerce, but I'll ask a dev, are you using some sort of financial transaction application on your phone? And the answer is almost universally yes. Well, one of the questions that you should be asking is, would you use it if it had the vulnerabilities that your application has? And that's when you know security is a feature, because it's not something that people were asking you for, but it was something that you and the people using your applications are expecting. In a lot of ways, I like to say this is kind of like the faucet that you go to or the sink that you may go to, and when you turn that left knob, you expect the water to be hot. That's universally true. You didn't have to ask anyone for it, and you didn't have to tell the plumber to install it that way. It's just the way that that operates. And so in a lot of ways, that's the way that people think of security today, is it's one of those utilities that you just expect it to be there and expect it to work as intended. There are benefits to treating security as a feature. A good example of that is attack complexity increases. One of the things that I like to think about here is, why are phishing attacks still so prevalent? Because people fall for them, first of all, and because the more complex attacks are really expensive. We can look at the zero-day market when it comes to things like iOS or Android vulnerabilities that are out there today, where you've had 0 days to apply a patch or implement security. And quite frankly, those costs are going up, and that's a good thing. Because what that ends up meaning is that the attacker ends up being a very small subset of the world's landscape. It ends up being state actors as opposed to cheeky kids on the internet, for an example. And so that way your application will be a little bit more robust, and quite frankly, you're outrunning a majority of the bears. Of course, it also differentiates your project or your product. If you think about Apple, for example, they're almost universally known for a lot of the security and privacy implementations that they've put in place. We can also look at examples within the software development landscape, such as React versus AngularJS. Back in the day, AngularJS, the original version of it, had a sandbox, and that sandbox had a lot of escapes, and it led to a lot of vulnerabilities, such as remote code execution or even full remote reverse shell. I've taught a couple trainings that have shown exactly how this works, and thankfully, Google has addressed that with later versions of Angular, such as by removing the sandbox in the original AngularJS because people were using it wrong. And in this way, if we think of security as a feature from the get-go, we can actually write on secure frameworks and languages like Rust to eliminate a vast majority of the vulnerabilities that enter our landscape. And of course, once you go ahead and invest in security as a feature, it allows you to save time and money. It's that return on investment, that compounding interest that allows you to actually go ahead and focus on other investments and experimentation so that you can grab more market share and of course differentiate your product and then pay down those other technical debts that you might be encountering. And then, of course, in terms of some tools that you can use, I like to say with static analysis, GitHub's advanced security toolset is phenomenal. Their acquisition of Semel is light years ahead of other products in the space, and I say that from being a code security engineer at Veracode in a past life. It is one of those tools that can really make a difference in your code base, and I strongly encourage any open source project to check that out. Dependency checking, again, making sure that you check the ingredients as well as of the static analysis recipe. Dependabot, really great tool if you're on the GitHub platform, which I would think that you probably are if you're watching this. And then, of course, OWASP's dependency check tool if you need another thing to go ahead and look into the environment and make sure that things are working appropriately and that the libraries you're using are fresh and secure.
All right, thank you for that chat on security. So now we've heard a lot about security, secret scanning, code QL, and how you can incorporate security as a as a way of thinking and making it a feature of all your development. So our senior product manager here at GitHub would go through, give you a roundup of the advanced security product and how you can get started and continue to use it going forward. So AJ, let's get it in.
Here at GitHub, we're really focused on understanding security from the developer's point of view, because empowering developers to build secure code is one of the best ways to move the needle on your security story. Now, there's a ton of great data in the State of the Octoverse report this year, but one of the things that I like to point out is how developers introduce security vulnerabilities at a relatively constant rate with every line of code that's written. And that's not me criticizing developers. I don't write the code, and I know just how hard it is. This should really underscore that writing secure software is really hard. It doesn't matter how smart your team is. It doesn't matter, how well you hire. There's a reason that MITRE has so many different CWE buckets. It's because as humans, we tend to introduce the same kinds of problems over and over again. Around 83% of applications have at least one security vulnerability in them. Organizations that adopt DevSecOps practices run security scans daily reduce their mean time to remediate security problems by around 72% versus organizations that run, just a few times a year. So that's why we at GitHub have been hard at work with a collection of security solutions that we call GitHub Advanced Security. Within GitHub Advanced Security, we've got three major product areas. The first is secure dependencies. And this is your classic software composition analysis or SCA capabilities. They help you track the software you depend on for vulnerabilities. Considering that, as much as 90% of the code on GitHub depends on open source, vulnerabilities in your supply chain are more important than ever. The next area is secure code. And this is our set of features that handle static analysis security testing, or SAST. While SCA looks for vulnerabilities in code you depend on, SAST looks for vulnerabilities in code you wrote by analyzing that code and finding bad patterns and data flows. Finally, secure secrets. We know credential leaks are a huge problem, both for security and reliability reasons. I mean, have you ever tried to roll keys on an app where someone hard-coded credentials into the source code instead of putting them into the key vault? It's not going to be a good day. You're going to cause an outage, and everyone's going to be unhappy. So let's drill in. Dependency review is a brand new capability that we unveiled here today. You might have seen Nat speak about it earlier. This helps give code reviewers insights about the dependencies in your pull requests. That's why we've made it really easy to view results in code scanning. Super easy by integrating those alerts into pull requests and making sure the developers are only blocked when they introduce a net new vulnerability in their code. That way, when you have a lot of security debt, it's not going to come up every day. It's not going to slow you down. It's still there, and we hope you'll fix it, but it's not in your way. CodeQL is the semantic analysis engine that powers our own security analysis. Now, a lot of static analysis tools out there do things like use regular expressions or look at bytecode to try and figure out what's happening. CodeQL, we actually map all the code in your repository into a graph database. And this is special because it allows security researchers to reason over that code and develop queries and find really complicated vulnerabilities with really high precision. By bringing all of this together in one user experience, we're making it easier than ever to get security challenges in front of developers before they're a problem for your users. And we're using that exact same infrastructure to help enterprise developers identify secrets in their private code as well. This scans the full history of your repositories, and it provides users with a native experience for triaging secrets that we find in your code. Now, as much as this is a security feature, it's also a reliability feature. We're working with everyone from big clouds like AWS, Azure, or Google, through developer tools like NPM, Twilio, HashiCorp, or Pulumi. This list is growing all the time as more and more companies work to help their users avoid security risks in the cloud.
All right. So I hope that made a lot of sense. And don't feel overwhelmed. All of these videos are fully available, so you can go watch that at your own time at githubuniverse.com. So at your own free time, definitely go check it out again. So next, we want to go through how we can all get better together, right? What enterprises can learn from global patterns in software development. So the next section, we'll talk, Nicole Fogren will talk through how you can learn from global patterns in software development. So let's kick it up.
We just released the State of Octaverse report last week. It was a birthday present to myself and to everyone else. We took a slightly different approach this year. So in addition to sharing with the world how GitHub has grown and changed, we also did some deep dives. We had quite a year. We have now grown to over 56 million total developers on GitHub. That's some power. When we say community, we say community. Now, we also see 72% of Fortune 50 companies are using GitHub Enterprise. Just in the last year, in the last 12 months, we see over 60 million repositories were created and 1.9 billion, with a B, contributions were added in the last year. Overall, and we see this fairly consistently across the time zones, many people are both working longer hours and getting more done. We saw contributions to open source jump initially 40% compared to last year. And then when they settle out at about 25% increase compared to the previous year. We found that once an open source repo starts using actions on their pull requests, we see an 18% faster time to merge that pull request and an increase of 30% more pull requests merged. GitHub released and announced discussions earlier this year. So we took a look at the next.js repository and how they were using discussions. And it was great to see and kind of exciting to see how this grew over time. And what we found is that it really helped keep this community more resilient and more sustainable. What some of our other analysis found is that some of the best ways to invite and encourage and foster newcomers to stick with the community are with issues. The challenge with issues is that can burn out maintainers. So the exciting thing is that we also found that one of the best ways to encourage newcomers is with discussions. Discussions is a way to engage, talk about what's happening, learn new norms. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, what does this have to do with me, Nicole? This is the enterprise track. This is great because as we think about scaling our solutions and scaling throughout our enterprises, think about things like centers of excellence or communities of practice. This helps make sure that our expertise isn't siloed. This helps us spread that excellence. It's a lot like InnerSource, right? We have so many things. We have expertise. We have process. There's so many things that we can share. We found that any piece of code or any repo has a 59% chance of getting a security alert in the next year for those active repositories with supported package ecosystems. Most vulnerabilities are mistakes. Only 17% of them are explicitly malicious, things like backdoor attacks, and they result in only 0.2% of alerts in the very commonly and most used repos and most used files. 83% of these vulnerabilities are the result of mistakes. So it's important to remember anyone can make a mistake and anyone can insert a mistake into your code base. So by leveraging the power of community, that means that anyone in this community can help find these vulnerabilities and fix them for you. Another benefit of automation, repositories that automatically generated a pull request using Dependabot to fix, patch their software 1.4 times faster. So many times people ask me, what does shift left look like? If I want to be doing DevSecOps, what does that look like? This is what that looks like. We can scale what it is that we find. We can build that into our development workflow.
All right. So the overall theme you've been hearing is about security, paying down technical debts, doing as much as possible to make sure that you reduce the vulnerability in the beautiful code that you're writing. So the next clip will talk to you how even at GitHub here, we are making sure that we are free of vulnerabilities and we are paying down our own technical debt and making sure that GitHub is more secure for all the developers all around the world. So let's get into the next clip.
So at GitHub this summer, we basically decided to have a project where we were going to pay down this technical debt with very specific outcomes in mind. We stopped most, not all feature development to really focus the engineering team on swarming on these issues. We went out to ICs to understand what are the problems that they are seeing. And of course, we looked at, what are the problems we're seeing kind of holistically across the entire system. And out of that, we came up with 3 major objectives or work streams for how we wanted to organize this effort. One was around both the outer loop, how you deploy software, but also our observability, both observability during a deploy and then just generally speaking. Another big set of work streams was around the inner loop and testing. That is, when someone is coding, they're making a build locally, they're running tests, all of those kinds of things. And then the final loop was, final work stream was specifically around reliability. What parts of the system do we need to make better and stronger so that the site is always up, always serving our customers in all cases? And so we organized across those. We had objective leads who kind of looked at each one of these 3, and then underneath them we created virtual teams of work stream leads to tackle very specific problems.
Ultimately, we selected these as some of the work streams that the projects that we were going to work on. First, we wanted to look at how we could speed up our artifact builds. And we need some more progressive rollout stages and automation around them. And we noticed that there were recurring themes of deployment problems that we could eliminate that could take care of that need for manual intervention. So we aimed to increase that deployment success rate. And we also wanted to add some resilience in our deployment process to GitHub.com outages so that we could use GitHub.com more in our deployment process so that we could restore service faster when there is, in fact, an event. Fast forward a couple of months, and here's what we were able to accomplish. First, we added several reliability features, and thankfully we were able to do this without adding friction, right? We were able to maintain that critical queue to deploy time that we watch because we shaved time off elsewhere. We've seen our deployment frequency bump up. We're often delivering over 100 pull requests a day to GitHub.com now. The number of deployment rollbacks we have to do are fewer and fewer. It saves so many hours of deployment interruptions each week. This past month alone, it was down another 15%. Last, the time to resolve incidents when they do happen is vastly improved. And I want to mention a thing that I was super excited to see happen here. We set up a mirror of our GitHub repository so that we can build and deploy GitHub still when GitHub isn't available. The thing that we do it when it is. And another one I'm super excited about is that we're enabling merge queues for more of our repositories. We separated out how we bundle up our pull requests, and that's separate out of the deployment process now for that repository. So yeah, so all of this, along with some simpler confidence dashboards, again, that progressive rollout automation, and really, I believe, just involving so many more people to work on this experience and the outer loop and the observability, it led to this great improvement in our development happiness measurement that we take each quarter. 160%, y'all, like that's big. And I don't want to neglect to call out another key observation related to this, and that is the increased unity across the engineering organizations, right? So many teams had opportunities to work together on things that we wouldn't ever get a chance to collaborate on normally, and the results of that have been so positive. But really, how do we keep this up? That's what's really important. So we have now what I like to call anti-slip measures in place. Formally here, we call it our fundamentals program. But for every improvement that we make, we set new benchmarks, we raise that bar, we monitor them each week to understand, does something need to be nudged a bit? Right, we have that additional visibility to make it a lot easier to have these conversations with product managers and engineering leaders. And it makes planning able to factor this in better and at least be more aware of what we're going to set aside if we're choosing to do other things, right? And we continue partnering and working with other teams who would really like to contribute. And this is helping us work smarter and be more effective and really get that high performing thing without having to work longer hours.
We leveraged our products, issues, actions, workflow integrations. We focused on the key metrics to identify bottlenecks and found a maintainable and a reusable solution. We ultimately built an internal tool that supports our developers and at the same time acts as a guardrail for product quality. And as for numbers, we reduced our CI time to 13 minutes, making our CI workflow 3 times faster. Then as an added bonus, we reduced our compute costs down by 1/4. This was improvement done just in one of the work streams. In the larger initiative, there was a lot more improvement as Liz talked about. But we focused on the fundamentals of development, tracking down important metrics: deploy frequency, change failure rate, time to restore a service, and of course, what I fixed, lead time to change. Above and beyond numbers, GitHub engineering worked together to identify, prioritize, plan, swarm on the most impactful issues that matter to us. We brought together teams from different parts of the organization to work on the fundamentals. And what warms my heart the most is how we were able to focus on our engineering platform, cracking down technical debt, making engineering improvements, so that we could continue to build the best-in-class developer products for you.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that session about how we are paying down technical debt at GitHub. We're getting towards the end of our Best of Universe series today. We still have 3 sessions to go. So it's been really fun, and I hope you've enjoyed your time with me today. So we've gone through security product features here at GitHub and all of the CI/CD functionality we've launched throughout 2020. 2021 is a great year. We'll continue to work hard here to make sure your lives are easier as developers all around the world. You guys are the reason why we exist at GitHub. So so over the next 3 sessions, we'll have 3 of our customers talking through how they use GitHub, their best practices, and how they are successful on the platform. So AJ, please, the next.
I'm Principal Tech Evangelist at Intuit, focused on tech culture. And I'm joined by my colleague,
Rocio Montes, Staff Software Engineer, leader in inner source and open source. I create tooling and automation to make these 2 initiatives successful.
At Intuit, we have 6 big groups across multiple continents and multiple time zones. Engineers and other technologists focus on delivering solutions declared as priorities by their groups. We have aggressive schedules to deliver features, fixes, and products to millions of customers. And speed, yes, it's a necessity. But man, to get there are some challenges. We solved it by taking inspiration from open source.
We implemented a solution that included an inner source model. Inner source takes the principles of open source into the enterprise environment. Inner source is a great tool to help break silos, encourage internal collaboration, accelerate new engineering onboarding, and identify opportunities to even contribute back to open source. You will for sure need leader support in order to provide time for training of their engineers, time for their engineers to adopt engineer guidelines and make the technology changes. And like I mentioned before, you need to create a set of unified guidelines. Also, identify your model teams, these teams that are going to be, like I mentioned, foundational capabilities in each of the business units that you have. Conduct workshops to teach how to do inner source. We actually had workshops at each Intuit site, and every chance we got, every conference, every event, there we were, inner source, rah, rah, rah. So it's really important that you teach what inner source is.
Now, you heard about the benefits at a high level for engineers. We also wanted to let you know that many engineers told us that by allowing engineers to contribute to other repos, they were actually investing in their craft and that they were learning new skills. And in addition to the engineers, there were other stakeholders that really do benefit. The other one is our internal and external customers. And our customers definitely said that, wow, the products, not only are they delightful, but when there's a problem, you get that fix out right away. Now, for the business, Rocio did mention the business earlier. For the business, not only was there speed in delivering solutions and products to customers, but there was definitely higher engagement from our engineers or from product development teams. And we believe that and we're starting to see, some data on this, but we believe that higher engagement leads to higher retention of top tech talent.
My name is Angie Brown, and I am a Vice President of Information Technology at the Home Depot. I currently have responsibility for our merchandising organization.
My name is Tony McCulley. I've been at the Home Depot for over 7 years now. I've been in the industry 20 years, which sounds crazy to me to say that now.
Our journey probably started back in 2014 on that front, which is really when we started what internally we call our agility transformation. And that's when we kicked off really changing how we build software, going from large projects with a large number of people and a large timeline to smaller balanced teams, leveraging test-driven development, leveraging continuous deployment. Just a variety of different things changed in our work practices as we were moving down that agile journey.
We just started spending more time trying to understand treat them as users and understand their challenges. start advocating on their behalf, and then trying to provide them solutions that sort of meet their growing needs and kind of meet them where they are. So this meant approaching platforms and infrastructure and tooling with sort of the same user-centric or product-based approach mindset that we do everything else. So like our frontline associates and our customer-facing experiences. So we needed tooling that meant empowering the engineers, supporting self-organization, and tooling that helped foster more collaboration and communication. Whenever you're talking about, this agile journey or, this transformation, I think one of the most important things is fostering this culture of continuous learning and improvement. And when you're talking about continuous improvement, it's very difficult to do that sometimes if you don't know where you came from or where you started or where you are. And so I think, figuring out what to measure and what to improve is really important. So that's been difficult in IT. I think, almost forever, but I think it's changed a lot in the last few years. And a lot of that has to do with the work that, Nicole Forsgren and Gene Kim and the others have done over the years with the DevOps Handbook and Accelerate. So the 4 key metrics that we learned about in Accelerate has been a really liberating thing for me in my space. A lot of the stuff that we used to do that, felt good or felt like the right thing to do, for the first time in a long time, like it's quantifiable, it's tangible, and it's measurable. And that's really liberating. For now, it's allowed us to treat our platforms and infrastructure and service offerings much more like a product. So we can experiment, we can make hypotheses, we can try things, and we can figure out what has a positive or a negative impact.
My name is Hung Brownson, and I'm the Chief Architect and Lab Manager at our 3M's Corporate Research and Development Group. I'd like to share with you our journey today from scientific poster sessions to GitHub Global Actions, how we've accelerated our digital innovations. By extending GitHub into Model Hub platform and using Booster as that interface with GitHub, we have drastically shortened the time it took for our modelers to onboard new models. From weeks to days, we've also tripled the number of models since launching Booster with GitHub this spring. The results have been fabulous. We've accelerated our modeling platform usage, and more importantly, we accelerated our research. GitHub has helped 3M transform in a number of different ways. By automating our 3-person folklore. We still do poster sessions today, but we've also complemented that with a GitHub ecosystem and a collaboration vehicle. We've enabled instantaneous collaboration where we couldn't do that with poster sessions. We've helped establish a culture of code reuse, which was our original objective, by the way, as we embarked on building these digital platforms. We've also helped to protect IP while accelerating our R&D innovations globally. And we've helped really to improve the way we work. And most importantly, we've brought us closer together across this diverse community of scientists and engineers. And because of this, we've accelerated our R&D and digital innovation. This is really important, and this has been an exciting part of our journey.
All right. Sad to say that this is the end of our Best of Universe highlights today. Please feel free to go check out all the sessions. It took a lot of work to congest over 60 hours of content into like a 1-hour meetup today. So definitely go back and check out GitHubUniverse.com to see all the full content at your time, anytime it's convenient for you. So after now, we would have a Zoom session. If you have any questions for me and for my colleagues, we'll be on Zoom for about 30 minutes, and you can ask questions that you have about any of the sessions that we've gone through today. And just to recap, today we had so many highlights. We had talk about GitHub Actions, GitHub discussions. We talked about GitHub Advanced Security. Definitely go back to any sessions today. This is available on YouTube. You can go check it out at any time you like. And please also be reminded that we would like to have you join us. We'd like to hear from you on Twitter. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, just mention us at GitHub. And also be reminded that, GitHub Universe 2021, we just had GitHub Universe 2020, will be coming up soon. So stay in touch to hear from us on that. So we'll be signing off now and going into the Zoom session. So please join us, and we'll love to hear from you.
It's another great day. We've got so many people from all over the world tuning in. Some of you have taken the time to stay up in the wee hours of the morning to come check us out, and I really appreciate that. Hopefully we've got some good stuff for you today. Today I'm going to introduce to you James. I'm going to bring him on stream. This is James Leha, everyone. James is a field solutions engineer here over at GitHub. Hey James, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, as you can see, things are a little different from the last time we did a little broadcast. We've got quite a few people watching at this time. What do you think about that?
I think it's awesome. I think it just shows the kind of breadth of our global audience and the people that use our products and services. So it'd be great to hear from everyone here, and hopefully y'all enjoy the content.
Yeah. So James, because we have so many folks watching and checking us out, everyone comes from completely different backgrounds and understandings of things. What exactly is a solutions engineer? What was your role, and how did you kind of come into that here at GitHub?
Excellent. Great question, man. And yeah, so as a GitHub solutions engineer, that means a few different things at a few different companies, but here especially it's a pre-sales engineer role, something people probably commonly hear it as. And really our job is to make sure that our customers are enabled to understand our products and services, and they really see us as a trusted advisor, because if they're able to use the things that they purchase and they have in their company and enterprises, what's the point? So we want to make sure that things are usable, accessible to all developers across the world and across your organization, as well as making sure that your relationship with GitHub remains. We want to take your feedback to our product group. We want to make sure that you're accessing our betas and alpha programs, right, for some cool new features, and you're helping us build the platform that you want to use every single day.
Okay. So would you consider yourself like a first point of contact if someone needs help with, something on GitHub, or if they're just getting started, or do you more come into play once, there's already an established relationship and there's a very specific project that folks are working on?
Yeah, that's a good one to ask right there too. And for us, we usually get contacted with our different accounts as they are expressing interest in the GitHub experience, right? So whether it be from initial calls to just demo the product or talk about what your current state is with your solutions. So we're usually the first point of contact for technical questions, troubleshooting, proof of concepts, documentation during the initial stages of our relationship together as a company. And then in the enablement phase as well, we're going to be alongside with our different customers, making sure that they understand the use of solutions and getting them any other support they need from either be our professional services team or enterprise support as well. So definitely that kind of initial part of the relationship, but want to make sure you're on a path for success going forward as well.
All right. And if I'm someone who is new to tech, maybe I'm just in a boot camp trying to decide how to get into tech and whatnot, how would you say is the pathway to becoming a solutions engineer? What would drive you along that pathway?
Great question. And for me, I was previously at Microsoft as a consultant for a couple of years, and I've always really been interested in the technical side, of course, the solutions, building different implementations, just really playing around with things, and hopefully you can see some of that today. But I always was extremely interested in the customer-facing side as well, making sure customers understand what solutions are out there, just understanding what your problems are and how we can fix that with technology, regardless of your tech stack or where you're at. Just getting you to that better place for your developers and for your customers, because we know that technology is key to innovation. And to be honest, I was never good enough to be an actual software engineer. So That's probably the truthful answer.
Well, so was Microsoft your first job in tech, or what was your first job in tech?
Gotcha. Yeah, that was my first job out of university. They have a consulting program for college hires, so anyone who's interested in that, definitely recommend you look into it. I believe it's called Aspire now, but Microsoft's a great place for new hires. They have college hires, of course, for software engineering, but of course for the professional services, sales teams, and really everything in between. So it's a great place for new college hires across the world. I've met a lot of great friends from Australia, India, that were also college hires when we met up in person, actually in Seattle after our first year.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that's a great way to kind of start things going. I see that there are a lot of folks from Belarus, so hello, Ilya. Hello, Naveen, who's asking who are we live for? We're live for you. And then I'm also going to introduce Brian here, who's also in the Solutions Engineering group. And oops, wrong one. Let's try this again. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Hey, AJ and James. I am good and ready to perform my sole function in this demo, which is to approve a deployment to Azure. So looking forward to that. This is James' show today, but you can catch me in about 3 weeks when I'll be doing something similar with some of the UI improvements that we've introduced over the last couple months.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you soon. So James, what are we going to tackle today?
Right, so today we're going to be looking at GitHub Actions, especially some of the new features that we've released since GitHub Universe, December 15th. Many of you have probably seen blog articles or saw the different recordings on YouTube that we had from our sessions. But GitHub Actions has been, I think, a really great hit across the world, over 6,700 actions created since November of last year. But the CD portion of that, from approvals, reviewers, those kind of gates of making sure how do we protect our production environment, those really weren't in there until now. So it's currently in beta for public repos, that's what we're looking at, and also available in beta for private repos for our enterprise customers of GitHub Enterprise Cloud. So that's what we're taking a look at and seeing how we can fit that into a pretty common use case, I think, deploying a solution up to Azure, or really any cloud of your choice, but we're using Azure today. Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and get my screen shared and we'll walk through this with everyone. And along the way, we'll be monitoring chat, so feel free to ask questions, everything like that, and we'll try to get to the ones we can. So we're actually been looking at this public repository I have. You can actually go out to my repo and look at it. It's live right now, so definitely recommend that. But what we want to see is this scenario of having a solution, an app, an environment you need to deploy, and you want to make sure it's going to go through all of the proper CI/CD checks, right? You want to make sure you're testing it, you're building it, you're deploying it up to sandbox, QA, before you eventually prove it into prod. So how can you do that in a secure fashion with some of the new GitHub capabilities of GitHub Actions? So this is a really simple Node.js app that I have. It's just going to deploy a really simple web app, and it's going to actually let us look up different users on GitHub. So actually, let's open this in our developer in GitHub Codespaces. So Codespaces is something that's actually in beta right now for public repos, and you can actually try it today, I believe, and this is something that allows you to have a IDE in the cloud. So as you notice, this experience, very similar to VS Code for anyone familiar with it. So I figured, why not use it for our demo as well? I'll include some resources in my README where you can look at some introduction videos to the concepts if you are interested. But as we can see here, we have my developer opened. And we're actually going to, let's actually first take a look at what this solution is doing. So I'm actually going to go ahead and run this. As you can see, it's actually going to open this in my local host, but that's actually the local host of this containerized development environment. So if I open it up here, you can now see that this Codespaces environment has opened up for me an 8000 port, so I can actually test my Node.js application. And as I mentioned, it's a really simple web app, and all we're going to do is it's going to let you search any GitHub user you want by just entering in their name. So I'm going to search my colleague Brian Krotz, you guys heard earlier. There's this handsome fellow, and just pull some information from his GitHub profile. It also has a error page as well, just to make sure there's no problems and gets caught. So we can see here that we're testing this and running this from our VS Code operation, but it's kind of a blank website right now. So let's actually go fix this up a little bit, test it, and then actually go through our deployment processes that we traditionally have seen before, and let's see how the new CI/CD capabilities, workflow visualization, will fit in play. All right, so I'm going to go over here to my solution. We saw it's kind of a blank website, so actually let's make it a bit more interactive, or at least a little prettier in the background. So I'm actually going to ask the audience here if I can see some of the comments. So we have a couple different images we can use for the background. We currently have this blank cat, this one. So we have one called Office Theme right here. We have another one called Keyboard for any of those that love mechanical keyboards, and a couple of just more nature-focused ones. So is there any preference from the audience on what type of environment to use? Let me know in chat, and we'll go ahead and fit that in there. And while I'm waiting for you guys to see, let me also update the home page of this. So I'm going to go to my index layout. Let me just go ahead and add into my title banner. There's a little banner message for it. Go and save this, and let me go actually and refresh my localhost. All right, cool. We see the header update. That's awesome. I'm seeing a couple different comments here. Ooh, man, it's a pretty split audience. So let me just go with the most recent one I'm seeing here from you, Shane. CPA. Let's go with the keyboard one. So I'm going to go back over to my style sheet. Let's update my background. See the keyboard. And I can't lie, that's actually one of my personal favorite ones, so sorry to everyone else, but we can definitely try some other ones in a later demo. All right, great. So it pulled over the keyboard background, update our header, and it looks like we can search for user still. Excellent. So let's go back here, see we made some changes. I'm actually going to open up. Let me actually quit out of the localhost. Let me just run my test real quick. Once again, as you're probably seeing, this is exactly what I do in the VS Code every single day, except now it's intrinsically tied to my GitHub repository. And just one thing about CodeSpace is this is containerized, it's reusable, so no longer are we struggling with it works on my machine but not your machine, or I need to download the right package, the right version of NPM or Python, whichever. Containerize these images with your extensions, your preferences, and then you can reuse them or share them with others inside your team, your company, your organization. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of changes made in here, so great. Let's actually look at a couple of different Azure deployments we're going to do using GitHub Actions and kind of walk through what the experience has been like up to this point and what it can now be with the new CD capabilities of GitHub Actions. So we have a couple different YAML files out there you can take a look at. But for this first one, what we're doing is we're actually just going to do a really simple deployment right here. We're going to deploy it into our main branch. And whenever a pull request occurs, we're actually going to grab a couple of these different environment variables we're setting you're probably familiar with. So we're going to set this up to use in our other jobs. So we're going to use this Azure web app we have, this version of Node, and then we're going to go through doing our build and test step. And then our deployment step here, we're just going to check out our code, set up Node, and then actually use our Azure Web Deploy action that's available in the Azure organization, a public GitHub action that anyone can use. We're going to feed in our Azure web app, and then the secret we have to provide is a published profile from the Azure web app as well that I'll show you. We're going to put it into our sandbox deployment slot, and then we're just running this validate job here. All it is a really simple action I actually found from the community. It's a URL health checker. So once this is deployed, it just makes sure whatever URL we're using is actually up and live, and we're getting a response back from it. Make sense? All right. So let's go ahead and deploy this up into my repo. We'll do a push, and then we can see this triggering out some jobs for us. So we went ahead and update the branch using the keyboard background. All right. So git push. Excellent. Let me actually go back up and open up my repository there. So we just did a push up to my repo, right, once again, from CodeSpaces. Cool. You can see it was pushed just a minute ago. I can actually create a pull request from here, but why not if some people have not experimented with the GitHub CLI? So if we look right here, I'm going to actually use the GitHub CLI, so just using GH. I'm actually going to use a PRR object, and I'm going to create one. If it lets me. So yeah, I'm going to take this pull request from my feature branch into my main branch. So I need to go ahead and give it a title. Let's give a body if I'd like to. I'll just skip it. And then I can actually do a couple things. I can just submit this right here. I can continue editing the browser or even add some metadata to it. I'm just going to go and submit it. Okay, it looks like that all finished up. If we go back here to my repo, we can see, hey, a new pull request was created. That's what we expected. And now we can see that's went ahead and kicked off a GitHub action. So this is something standard I'm sure you guys have been familiar with before. If we go over here to our Actions tab, we can see this action has just been deployed. So let me show you actually where it's going to be deployed to so we can understand some of the context and what we've set up so far. So for those familiar with Azure App Services, really simple way to deploy different solutions or websites up into an Azure website itself. And right here, all we've done is inside this resource group, have an app service plan and app service. So this app service, we're going to take a couple different things. So of course we have the name of it. That's what we specified in our YAML file that you probably saw. But we also have a couple different deployment slots as well because I want to deploy to multiple different environments at the same time, or I want them to be gated. I don't want to just deploy to one static website all the time. So what I love is you can just add different deployment slots, name them whatever you want to, staging, UAT, production, doesn't matter. And right here, you can see I've already created one for Sandbox and QA. So how does Azure know what environment for me to actually deploy into? As you can see, we didn't actually do any like Azure login job using a service principal or anything. You totally could, but that might expose you to a very large range of credentials and permissions that you're given that one single login to do. Instead, we can actually use a published profile. All right, so right here, we can see that in this app service, this is for my Sandbox environment, and there's this option to actually get a published profile. So you download this, it's just going to open up, it's just a text file, and then once you have that, you can actually paste that content into your GitHub Actions secret and now reference it. It's going to contain a username and some generated passwords, so it's definitely a sensitive file, and you can see there's even an option to reset it to make sure it's secure. But that's how you're going to do this. And you can do this for each of your different environments that we saw earlier. So I can do that for my staging, for my QA, get published profile, and then for my primary production one, we're going to do the same thing as well that we've already done actually, get a published profile. All right, so that's kind of the background where we're actually going to be deploying this to. And let's actually look at my Sandbox environment real quick. Let's see if it's been deployed to yet, just so we can maybe see it before and after. All right, so we can see this is an Azure website out there. Okay, so this is the blank website I had previously. You remember, we doesn't have our new nice background with the keyboard, doesn't have a header either. So now if I go back over here to my GitHub Actions, let's see what the status of everything is. So the first thing you're noticing here is this nice little workflow visualization graphic. Okay, this wasn't here before. It was added in some of our recent releases over the past month or so from those announcements, and we're going to see how this can actually be really nice to just see these more complex workflows in action and how things are working with one another. So right here we can see, hey, it sees 3 different jobs inside of this YAML file itself: the build and test job, the web app deploy job to Sandbox, and then the validate deployment job. Okay, those are the 3 jobs once again from our workflow YAML file we saw earlier, right? Our job for build and test, web deployment, and validate. Yeah, no problem.
Sorry to break in. I've got a request to kind of rewind a little bit. Seems like you lost focus on the last step.
Yeah, that's totally fine, y'all. So let's start back from a few other steps now. So let's get back here to Azure real quick. And just a reminder, right? We're going to be deploying here from our GitHub action. So the different values and credentials we need. One is just the app service name itself, phenomenal-GitHub. And the published profile itself is going to point to this specific deployment slot we have, right? Because we're going to actually deploy 3 different versions of this. We're going to deploy it to a Sandbox environment, QA, and eventually to the production one. So that's where you get the published profile for each of these respective environments. So we went ahead and did that for the Sandbox one. And let me actually show you where that's stored inside our repo, because that's what our action is referencing and using. So I go back here to my GitHub action. We saw the different jobs that are running. Currently it's deploying the web deploy to Sandbox. And I'll actually look at that job one more time. So here's actually going to go ahead and deploy it to our Sandbox environment. And what is it doing? We actually specify here, this is parameter for this GitHub action, the web app deploy. This is one Azure makes. I did not create this action. The great part of GitHub Actions is they're reusable components made by large companies or just users out there. And one of the parameters you can specify is actually the slot name. So I'm going to specify that slot name we saw in my Azure portal, Sandbox. And then I'm going to actually also specify the secret published profile for Sandbox. This is something I actually want to kind of focus on a little bit. Every time you want to deploy to a different environment, you have to have your secrets stored inside GitHub, and you have to specify each secret for each type of environment or whatever variable it belongs to, right? We're deploying to different environments. They have different connection strings, keys, publish profiles, whichever it may be. So that's fine, but when you have larger deployments or you're trying to scale this out, that can become a bit of a pain sometimes. And we'll actually look and see how GitHub can alleviate that with some of these new CD capabilities. All right, so it looks like my job's actually just finished. So let's go back to the summary page right here. You can see green all on the way. And what actually happened in each of these. So it looks like our build and test. It ran, NPM, ran our test, everything passed. Our sandbox deployment went ahead and deployed to Azure. All right, we got to get a response back. And then my validate deployment step, really simple job. This could actually just be a step inside, but I wanted to keep it outside just to show what it's doing. And it actually seemed like it made the URL request for us. It checked it, and it got back a positive response. So if we go back in here, we can actually now see where it's actually deployed. So it's saying deploy to this URL. So I click this. We can see, all right, my website has just updated. And it matches what I had in my code spaces earlier, right? So this was the previous website before this update. Let me refresh the browser, and we can actually see that's now been picked up. And sometimes it takes it a little bit with the incognito browser and whatnot, but let's just confirm that it's all good to go. All right, great. We got our keyboard in there that we chose earlier. I think that was Shane that specified that. And then we can see phenomenal devs in here as well. All right, so the website's up. Let's just make sure it works. Search for someone. All right, looks like we got a good response. And actually, if anyone has a, people want to zoom in. Let me zoom in a little bit for y'all. If anyone has a GitHub user handle they want me to search, go ahead and put it in chat, and I can actually search for y'all as well while I focus on my Zoom. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And once again, if y'all have any problem seeing or anything like that, just let me know. I'm seeing a couple questions in chat. Right here, a couple around, why Node, not C#. Node.js, just simple solution, and this was a really simple web app to do as well. There's actually a guide that actually followed for this in the README you can see, but obviously you can deploy this with C#, .NET web apps, really whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And so people are asking, why not AWS, or can we use Google Cloud or something else? You totally can. That's a great thing about GitHub Actions is it's cloud agnostic. It works on any single platform because these different companies are building actions for it. All right, and someone in chat actually told me to look up your handle, and all right. I see you're a wannabe programmer, and I don't believe that. Looks like you have quite a bit of experience and things you love about, so I appreciate that in the chat. And we'll get some more actually as I'm going through and testing this. All right, everyone, so it looks like our web app actually deployed properly. We got our content in here. So that was a really simple example. I'm sure those that have actually worked on this before have probably seen this. Maybe not the workflow visualization, but it's still pretty simple, right? So let's actually go back and use some more complex examples to show you how this can affect different environments and kind of how we build this out to accommodate different use cases. And some people are asking if this is going to be recorded and available. And yes, it will be. AJ, correct me if I'm wrong, though, and put on our YouTube page at youtube.com/GitHub, right?
Yeah, it'll be immediately available on Twitch and LinkedIn right after the stream is done, and then yes, we will put it on YouTube.
Appreciate you, man. All right, so let's go back into my code spaces. And that was our first YAML script, really simple demo, but let's go through and actually work with the next one. So I just deployed to a single environment. All right, that's fine, not a huge deal. But let's create a dependent relationship between two environments or multiple environments at the same time. So right here, I'm going to deploy once again to my sandbox environment you saw earlier, and you saw it had a secret for sandbox. And then I'm also going to deploy at the same time to a QA environment that has its own published profile for QA in the secret as well. Remember, we took this from Azure, and we're using this deployment slot name for the different environments we're going to. So let me go ahead, commit this change. Should go ahead and trigger our GitHub Actions. All right, looks like we saw another trigger over here. And what this is going to do now is actually send this job, and it's actually a more complex version. So instead of just doing a simple build and test to sandbox and validate, I actually added in a couple different jobs here. So we added in of course, deploying the QA as well. We also add in a prettier job. That's just using a prettier for Node.js to make sure my code looks all right, and also a linter. So this is actually using the github.com/GitHub super linter. This one's really cool. It's actually a compilation of a bunch of different linters that GitHub has put together and kind of maintains and allows you to use them. You can see you have a couple different parameters and environment variables I've entered here, so I'm not going to worry about Markdown or CSS for this run just because it's all pretty heavy and pretty noisy for the demo purposes. But there's a lot of cool things you can use for it. So super linter, definitely recommend you check it out. All right, so we can see this job, though, is now deploying. And you can see where this visualization is kind of nice because not only are we using a matrix build for our testing, so now we can test across 3 different versions of Node at the same time. It's also showing the relationship between each of these. So if you're familiar with GitHub Actions, you know that you can use this needs keyword, right, to specify what job has to run before this job is able to go itself, or what job actually has to run successfully before this job can run. So we can see here that if we hover over this, it shows a relationship between all these different jobs. So if I hover over my sandbox job, for example, it's saying that the matrix build and test and the prettier have to complete and finish before sandbox can start, and the validate deployment is waiting on sandbox to finish before it will obviously validate where I just deployed to. Same thing here for my QA environment as well. In the lint code base, it's actually just by itself. It's just lint. It's not deployed to yet, but you can see how these things are standalone. They're connected together, and I think it's just a really nice thing. Especially there are a lot of complicated examples out there that I've heard different companies use in their YAML scripts. So having that visualized in one place, you can kind of scale it in now, is at least, I hope, a little bit easier. Definitely give us feedback on it. And hey, if anyone is having issues seeing my screen or anything, let me know. I'm seeing one comment in chat. Not sure if that's my issue or anything else, but definitely let me know if anyone's having any problems in terms of the visuals. All right, so this is going to go ahead and deploy up to my QA environment. And while it's doing this, let's actually look at my GitHub secrets. So GitHub secrets are a great way to store your secrets safely and use them inside your CI/CD builds. We never want to put a plain text personal access token or API key or connection string, right? So we actually go over here to our secrets section. This has been around for a long time. You can use repository secrets. This allows you to create a secret, name it, provide it whatever value. You can do this once. We'll actually be able to see it the time you enter it. And once it's added, it's there and available. But you can also go in and update a secret if you ever need to change the value of it. Once again, you can't read and see those values. It's just available to the GitHub Action job itself to use. So this is great, and you're seeing here, it's where I have my QA profile and my sandbox profile for the Azure web app. This works, but the question is, hey, do I want to have a production or pre-production value or key or login in this repo secret that anyone could just use when they're running a GitHub Action on this repository? We're obviously trusting our team members, but there always needs to be some level of control, right? So that's actually something we're going to address in the next example here with this concept of environment secrets. And you can see we're actually naming these environments a couple different things. So I know it's a little bit of a teaser, but we're going to get to it right now. So with that problem, let's go back into my GitHub Action. You see this is go ahead, and it's going to be running, which is fine. But we're actually going to go ahead and look at the next version right here. So inside of my next demo YAML, let me actually clean up my first one. I think I saw someone said live coding is dangerous, and yes, it definitely is. Hopefully limit it to just commenting in and out lines isn't too bad, but you never know, so I appreciate that, that call out. All right, so this next YAML file, it's going to be pretty similar to what we did earlier, except we're actually going to introduce this concept of environments and environment variables. So in order to really accommodate a true CD protection and approval gates and reviewers, you need to really reference what each of these different stages of your pipeline are, right? Where's our production environment? Where does our QA environment start and end? Where's pre-production? So you can actually do that now inside your YAML with GitHub Actions using this environment keyword under a job. So what this does is under a job, for example, in our web app deploy to sandbox, we have this environment keyword, just like you would have keywords for your name, for your runs on, for your needs. There's now a new one for environment. And it's environment, it's not EV, it's not just ENV for environment variables, it's actually just spelled out environment. So make sure you have that difference whenever you're using this. But with this, you can actually do a couple things. You can want to specify the environment name. All right, so it's going to say, hey, this job and everything inside of it, it's related to the sandbox environment. All right, that's great. And you can also add this URL component too. So this is great because instead of having to go through or comment in what the URL is or look at the output of the job itself, you can actually now see this inside the GitHub Action Run in a pretty convenient place that we'll see here in a quick second when we kick this off. But all right, so we're going to use the environment variable for our sandbox environment. And you can see here actually, under my published profile name, when before I was using that published profile for sandbox or for QA, I had to specify that, right? Each and every single time, a different name. Kind of becomes a pain in the butt when you have a bunch of environments, you have to go through and you're kind of trying to update this over and over again. You want to reuse this, but you're afraid to break it. But instead, we're just using Azure Web App Published Profile just once. So if we go down here to our Web App Deploy, we did the same thing we did earlier. We have an environment. We're calling this one QA this time. And we're also giving it a URL for the QA environment. If we go here, though, the published profile, the secret, it's actually the same secret name as our sandbox environment. And, you know, if you were using GitHub Actions maybe a month and a half ago or so before, you know, we made all these CD changes and additions, you would be kind of confused because that would reference the exact same secret for both of these jobs and both of these steps. So if it's referenced to the same secret, how's it going to deploy to different places, right? And that's actually the beauty of using these environments because we can now define secrets for environments themselves. So whenever this job is in the context of an environment, like QA, it's just going to look for the secret name that matches what QA is offering. It can still use other repo secrets you have, right? But if you have a specific secret value for your environment, you can just reuse this component, and it's going to be able to eliminate and choose the correct one. I know that was a lot of jargon. We'll see in action. It'll make a lot more sense there. Just want to kind of prime up a couple of things. So we can see here, we're doing what we kind of did earlier, though. We're validating the QA. And our last step here, we're actually going to go ahead and deploy this into prod. And once again, it's doing the same thing it did previously. And we're actually using the production slot this time. And we're going to also deploy it to using the same name of a secret. It's not the same secret, though, because remember, it's going to be referencing a different environment. All right, and then it's going to go ahead and validate this production deployment. All right, so let's go back to my jobs over here. Let's take a look at one of these deployments. All right. So our deployments here went ahead through. So it's the previous one. Looks like production, looks like the one for Sandbox failed. Let's see what's going on here. Just make sure this is live. Looks like it's still up. So let's go ahead and just run this secondary demo right here as well now. And we'll deal with any issues we have along the way because that's what you gotta do. All right, so let's go ahead and use our third demo. I say third, but you can see I named these all, you know, starting at index 0. So go ahead and push it up. Oh, actually go ahead and show the changes in here for my browser. Always fun. Oh, that might be my bad. All right, there we go. Get that pushed up. All right, so let's see. Go back into my repository. And it looks like this is going ahead and kicking off our jobs. So we go and see 2 of these. All right, so it's kicking off that one for our production deployment. Let me actually cancel this one. It's one of our previous builds. Okay, so while it's kicking off, let's look at a couple of things. First, you saw the workflow visualization we were using earlier. And something cool I want to point out, you can actually now use emojis in this as well. If you have emojis for your job names, they'll also show up in your workflow visualization, which I think is just a nice little cool add-on. So we're using the same things we did previously, right? Doing our build and test, we're using Prettier to make sure things look good. Our lint code base is now going to kick off, as well as our deployment to QA and Sandbox. So our production deployment is actually going to be reliant on multiple different jobs before we can get to that step, right? So we're saying here that we actually need all the previous jobs to complete and finish before we're going to be able to deploy to production. So our build and testing is to finish, our deployments, the prettier, the linter, have to all complete successfully before we're going to be able to approve a production deployment. I said approve a production deployment, not just automatically deploy production, and we'll see why here when we look at these environment settings. All right, so this is kicking off. Let's give it a little bit of time. Things hopefully should go through smoothly, but if not, we'll troubleshoot anything that's not working. But let's look at where you actually set up all these different settings and functionality. So if I go over to my settings page, I go over here to my environments, a new section available. If you're using a public GitHub repo, you should see this. Or if you're using GitHub Enterprise Cloud, you should see it as well. And for anyone asking, I think someone asked earlier, we are currently using GitHub Enterprise Cloud for this demonstration. GitHub Enterprise Server is actually adding support for GitHub Actions pretty soon of our next release coming within a few weeks. All right, so here in my environment section, you can see we can actually do a couple things. We can create a new environment. And when you do that, you just give the environment a name. Go ahead and click Configure Environment. And once you're here, you can do a couple different things. So you can add this concept we said of environment secrets. That's how we were able to use that same web app publish profile name multiple different times, because once again, each of those jobs using it was in the context of a specific environment. So you can go ahead and add an environment secret name. It's the same way you add any other secret. Go ahead and add it there. Once again, it's not this environment though. It's only available when this environment is actually running. Okay, so it's available when the environment's running, but how does it actually protect our environments? How does it actually protect production or someone from using the secret by accident or on purpose the wrong way? That's where these protection rules come into place. And this is honestly one of my favorite components of it so far. So the fact that you can now add one await timer, so you can say, hey, how long before you actually want to let someone approve this deployment to production, right? Maybe you have some unit tests or Selenium tests you need to run on whatever environment you're deploying to. Or who are the required reviewers to actually approve this workflow as well. You can add the 6 reviewers, and for those that have used GitHub for some time, probably familiar with this, it's kind of like branch protections, right, for our required reviewers, UI and visual. I think that was very much on purpose. We want to keep this a very GitHub-centric experience, something you're used to. And the thing about this is that I like is you can actually assign anyone a reviewer that has read access to your repository. So they don't have to have admin access per se. And I think the reason behind this is there may be some scenarios where, hey, I'm just a manager. I just need to have a view into what's going on in these repos. I just need read access. I don't want to be actually touching code. Sometimes you don't want the person approving a code deployment to somewhere to be someone that actually wrote the code itself, right? So it gives you a way to build in some responsibilities there. But you can add anyone that has access to the repo as long as it's at least read. So if I click in here, I can go ahead and add someone. I can go ahead and add Brian Cross. And I can save the protection rule. I think I see a message just popped up. How does GitHub figure the existence of different environments? I notice it shows the different environment on the homepage. Can you specify these somewhere? Yeah, so in terms of the different environments themselves, we're specifying them that we saw previously in our YAML file. Under each of the jobs, you have the environment section, right? And GitHub themselves, though, that's a great point. You see that on your homepage of your repositories. And let's take a look at what that does, because that's been around for some point in time. Deployments inside GitHub using the deployments API for your pull requests or different things, add a URL, kind of keep track of that. We kind of realized that that wasn't being used as much as we'd like to. And I think that's where using the environments and deployment mechanisms together just made a whole lot of sense. So actually, let's go ahead and take a look at that while we check up on our action itself. All right, so it looks like our deployment is in progress. We'll let these finish up. All right, so while those are finishing up, let's take a look at where environments traditionally are inside GitHub. Now, if we go over here to the home page of my repo, you're probably used to seeing this on the right-hand side. You got your releases, you got packages for GitHub packages, language support, what's the breakdown of your repo, and now you also have environments, or you always had environments, but now you can use them a couple different ways. So we click in here, you can see, hey, these are the different environments you have. Here's the activity log of recent deployments that have occurred. And it's cool because you see this now kind of historical activity log time frame of what's going on with your repo, what's going on for code, right? So we can see that we're actually deployed to Sandbox just a few minutes ago in QA, and they're both in progress. Makes sense, right? We triggered them at the same time to go and deploy to our environment. If we scroll up here, we can see in our top environments, we can see, hey, what was actually recently deployed since I've been playing around this for a little bit. But down here where it says show all environments, you can actually show specific environments. So let's look at Sandbox. What's the history of Sandbox been? I've been playing around with this for the last couple of days, right? So it's showing, hey, there was an error deploying it, or hey, it deployed successfully recently, or hey, it's currently deploying. So it gives you a great breakdown of what's going on in your environments, because that's really at the core of CI/CD, really that end-to-end DevOps experience, right? Making sure that we're going to the right place and we're getting the proper feedback from it, and we have a traceable journey of how we got there, okay? Whether it be this worked correctly or this worked incorrectly. We want to be able to track that down. So that's why I'm really glad we're using this environment section even more so, and I think a lot of people are going to be living in here a lot more than they have previously. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our GitHub action. Let's see the status of this as it's deploying. All right, great. So we see a couple deployments in here, and it's actually going to be waiting for a prod deployment. So you can see here I actually add a wait timer to that production environment, so it's going to wait for that to actually deploy. But while we're doing that, let's actually see who I added to my production environment, right? If you see here, just going back, it says production, the environment name we specified in our YAML is waiting for review, and it's waiting about a minute and a half right now before we're actually able to approve it. So I go over to my environment section, I go over to my production. You can see I had a wait timer for a minute. I gave it, once again, the environment secret for the web publish profile. And you can see I added my colleague on the line, Brian Cross. He's going to be acting as our tyrant boss who he approves every single thing before it goes somewhere. But it's production, so I'll give him a pass because that's probably fair that it's on his shoulders rather than mine if something goes wrong. All kidding aside, those secrets you saw as well, that's how they're being broken up, right? Here's the repo secrets available to anyone to use really inside a GitHub action workflow, right? Anyone inside your repo, of course. But the environment secrets, they're specified, they're environment specific. Once you destroy the environment, they're no longer available. And if you're building gates like we have here with our approvals, only when it's approved can you actually access and use that action itself. All right, so it looks like there's actually, the wait time's over for it. So AJ and Brian, if you're ready, would you mind sharing Brian's screen over there? And we can see if he's kind enough to approve this for me. Hey, wait a second. Brian, you're live. All right, so we see my guy Brian in here.
Hear my voice?
Yes, sir, we do.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, so that's easy enough to do. I've got the workflow right here. I might want to actually take a look at the deployment that went to QA just to make sure that it's not completely off the chain. James is a great developer, but you never know what's happening. So here we are in our QA deployment. I'm going to go ahead and just check that out. After all, it is my neck on the line. Oh, look, an adorable cat photo. I love cat photos. All right, so everything looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this deployment by clicking on that item and then clicking on Review Pending Deployments. I'm going to say Production. This looks great. Need more cat pigs. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this, and that workflow should now be on its way.
Awesome. I appreciate it, boss man.
No worries. Good work. I'm going to go back to looking at cat pics.
All right. I'll see you later. All right. So you guys saw that experience, right? So Brian went in there. That was his viewpoint into the repo, right? You saw the action run. You saw he was prompted to make a review, right? Because he was specified as one. I couldn't do it on my end because I did not add myself there. One thing to specify, the persons who can actually create environments inside your repos and add reviewers and approvals and wait timers, those are going to be the repo admins themselves. So repo admin, obviously the God mode position inside your repository. So the repo admin is the one that can set that up, right? And specify, hey, I'm the repo admin, but we're going to make for this, these workflows belong to developers, but the actual reviewer is going to belong to just a read-only user like Brian, who's able to go in there and approve the workflow. Even better, we can scroll down here inside this workflow run and say, hey, what's the deployment review? What's going on? We can see Brian approved this. Thank you so much for production. And this is his comment. And I'll definitely take him up on that. More cat pictures for future notice. And we actually click in here and see the production environment as well. And y'all can once again see that history of how production is doing and see it deployed. Okay, so while that's deploying, let's actually check out a couple different things that we were able to generate and specify using our new YAML syntax for environments. So over here we saw environments. We're saying, hey, for Sandbox, here's the URL. This actually comes into play now in our workflow visualization. So now it's really easy. You can just go ahead and click these links that are specified for each environment once it successfully finishes. So I can click here and it's showing me my sandbox environment. Clicking here, it's showing me my QA environment. Excellent. What Brian was able to double check as well. So I just love that added visibility into what's going on with your repos and who exactly is deploying where, and actually how can I access and see it. Using that with environments on your homepage, I think it just makes that experience of DevOps even more straightforward and kind of more synergistic of what we're working on. All right, so that's going to go ahead and deploy to prod. It's going to do the same steps we did previously. And while that's happening, let's actually pivot back and look at our Azure portal, because that's where everything's living, right? We've been working in GitHub so much because we got set up, we didn't really have to go over there and check anything out. But if we go over here back to my Azure portal, inside my resource group here for my app service, you can see different app service slots were created for this singular app service plan. We actually go to each of these as well and check on the health of them. Under deployment slots where we created multiple. You also have an option inside Azure for swapping deployment slots if you want to. We're not using that in today's demo. We're just going to go ahead and promote these environments, but this is a great concept as well, in case something goes bad and hey, let's just go back to our QA or UAT version and we just blew something up for some reason. So I'm going to go over here and click into my sandbox environment. And let's just make sure. All right, yep, same link, same URL, so we know it's clicking and deploying to the right place. All right, so over here in our YAML, what's been going on? Specified environment, specified all the different needs it has. It says it's prod, I want to make sure everything passed, and that's exactly what happened in this scenario here. All right, and looks like our production deployment actually just finished up as well. And it's on the last step there, which is validating the deployment, but that's not a requirement before I can actually access it, so let's click this. All right, great. So here's my live production slot of my Azure web app. The website is up and open. Let's search for one of my software engineering friends at GitHub here, Ivan. All right, see his profile is live, everything looks good. Let's see if... All right, and my error page is working as well. And hey, I see a couple people there in the comments. And hey, if anyone actually has a handle they want me to search up, go ahead and throw it in chat again. I'll give you a search. I see here we're having a couple different questions as well. Put questions for emojis. Yep, so emoji support is available with GitHub Actions. If there's error with using on the GitHub Actions screen, I'm actually not sure. But I'll actually point you out here in a second to README and some different resources if you're having any issues or troubleshooting or just general questions or feedback with GitHub Actions as well. All right, so let's go over here, back to my GitHub deployment, and look at what we got. So let's just recap everything that we've seen so far, right? We've seen using workflow visualization, how you can see relationships between different jobs and what's depend on what, and where things have to travel through and through. We've seen how you can even add emoji support, but also most importantly, environment support to the workflow visualization to understand where your different environments are existing, as you can see here, QA, my sandbox, and my production URLs. And we also see inside our workflow file itself, the new addition of environments and this concept that allows us to define the different scopes of what secrets belong to what specific environments, as well as define, like we saw earlier, where Brian was able to be my required and only approver in this situation for actually allowing me to deploy into production. A safety approval gate, protection measurement, and making sure any keys and tokens and connection strings you're putting into GitHub secrets inside your repo are actually protected as well, because I know that's another question we've had over probably the past couple months. How do I secure these secrets? I trust my developers, but this is our production environment or production database. We got to make sure that it's secure, and now you can with GitHub environments as well. All right, so we've looked at a couple things there. I just want to show one kind of neat scenario of using environments and actually building this out into matrix builds with our last demo deployment here. And we don't have to see this one all the way through. Leave some time for any questions or comments and share some other things with y'all. Let me go ahead and close out. Let me save these different sites. And let's go ahead and use our demo 3. All right, so this is going to be very similar to what we used prior. push it, go ahead and trigger it. But instead of specifying just each individual environment like we did, let's actually use that same concept of matrix builds you're probably really familiar with inside GitHub and apply that to our environments as well. And it's actually kind of my nice little, I wouldn't say hack, but I think it's really conducive in certain situations, right, where we want to scale out, we want to make using environments or deployment slots a kind of modular thing that we can modify on the fly. So right in here, we're feeding it a matrix, an array, right, of two different environments, so sandbox and QA. And it can actually take those in when it's defined the environment itself. So you can see here it's saying, hey, what's the name of your environment? Hey, go ahead and take it from a matrix strategy, the environment value, each of these. And same thing with the URL, right? Go ahead and build this URL based on whatever matrix strategy I'm using, as well as the title of this job as well. So when it does that, it's going to go through here. I'm using it also for my deployment slot. And it's going to go ahead and, hey, go ahead and deploy to my QA and sandbox at the same time. Maybe later on someone wants to go in here and add in a UAT environment or a testing environment or staging 2, staging 3, whatever. You can just add it simply here instead of having to copy and paste that entire section, right, for deploying to prod, deploying to QA, deploying to sandbox every single time. Just modulate that inside a matrix build. And once we do that, our prod deployment is just going to be reliant on that web deploy job we defined up there to pass. Okay. So let's go back to my GitHub action. Let's go ahead and open it up, and we should see our latest run. Great. And right there, you can see our deployment there. It's using a matrix build to deploy to two different environments. So that same concept you've probably been using for the last year plus of GitHub Actions, you can now use with your new environment variables too. All right, I'm going to go back to my pull request and show you that experience and how these updates are made in there. And while I'm doing that, I'm seeing some different questions in chat. I see one here from, I think, is that Bashir, asking, can you run on-premise GitHub Actions just like GitLab Runner? I guess it depends on what you're asking there. If you're asking about not using the GitHub hosted cloud, right, for your GitHub Action workflow runs, you totally can. We have something called GitHub self-hosted runners. If you just type that into Google, into our docs, you'll see it. And that allows you to offload and point your GitHub repository workflow runs not to our actual cloud-hosted runners, but actually to your own runners. These are just machines, VMs, whichever. You just install a really simple, lightweight package we have, and it'll allow you to connect each of those workflow runs. Whenever they trigger, they can look for one of your machines themselves, so you can self-host these yourself on premises or in cloud. Doesn't matter to us. Maybe we're talking about GitHub Enterprise Server, right, where you self-host GitHub Enterprise itself. GitHub Actions is coming to that in our next release, hopefully here in the next coming weeks. All right, seeing some more comments in chat. What's your advice? Say, hey, okay, here's one from, is that your Tolga? What's your advice for legacy.NET developers who are not really aware of these DevOps things? Well, you know, that's a great question, and honestly, there's so much going on all the time. I'm pretty sure people in chat can agree to that, right? Staying up to date about everything can just be so much to try and do. But I definitely recommend resources like this here on LinkedIn. I'm not sure exactly how many, but I do know LinkedIn Learning has a couple free resources available, and if you have a subscription, even better. Plenty of great courses I've enjoyed, as well as our YouTube channel. You know, at GitHub YouTube, you can find a bunch of different content about us doing these deployments, these videos, as well as following us here on our Twitch and LinkedIn channel as we're doing these demos every single Friday to review different content and material inside it. But I'd say in general, just kind of get started. You know, it's never too late, I think, in my book, and you have to hit the ground running at some point. No one can know everything by any means, so just starting, I think, is the first step. And just don't be intimidated. There's plenty of great resources out there, so reach out to your network and to the community we have on github.com. All right, so let's look at this pull request real quick, and then if there are any additional questions, we can have some time too. I'm seeing some people in chat also mentioning some resources, so that's great. All right, so we can see here that this deployment section is now available in a pull request. And this has been available before, but I just like how Actions ties it in very neatly. And now those environments it's deploying to, those are the same ones we're actually setting up, right? Either manually or whenever you run your GitHub action where it's specified, they'll also create them for you. So we can see here it's pointing out, hey, here's your production, your QA. You can go ahead and do the deployment from your pull request. Awesome. Other people working on it. Or maybe just project managers or business analysts who need to go take a look. And of course, your status check UI that you're aware of, showing you what the status of everything is and how everything's going. All right. So everyone, looks like we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I think a couple people are actually playing with the website, so I appreciate that. Go ahead and do a search. I would warn you, though, there is a limit of, I think, about 30 or so searches within an hour, because I'm not using an access token or anything, so it's just using the free open API to search different users. But hey, feel free to go do that. This repo is out there and available for y'all to take a look at, fork, pull requests, or anything like that. I have a bunch of different references in the README. One thing I do note, do not use this for production employment. There actually is a known vulnerability with one of the components. Sadly, it's a component being used by another component. Love open source sometimes in that situation, but hopefully that gets resolved soon. But once again, this is just for demo purposes. Please not use it in production. Some steps here on how to run it locally, how to test it, as well as additional reference material, right, from our documentation on GitHub, Microsoft, how I actually built this app. There was a really simple tutorial out there I followed. It was great, as well as some different YouTube videos on code spaces and GitHub Actions, of course, if you want to take a look at this content some more. If you want to participate in the discussion, feel free to open an issue or discussion thread in here, or visit our community page on support community with GitHub, and we have a code to cloud section where you can ask questions, start threads, or just provide feedback. Our product team is really receptive. We want to know, how do you want to see this product and solution grow? Do you want to have a minimum required amount of reviewers? Do you want to maybe have something additional to just wait timers or required reviewers? Do you want environments to be able to scale differently, or different types of environments or sub-environments? Whatever it is you're thinking about, let us know, because we love that from the users. And honestly, if you're not using this, there's no point in us developing it, in my perspective. I see someone here said, can I post a link in the chat description? I cannot, sadly, I don't have access to it right now, but this recording is up on GitHub, and if you just search this or add this URL, so like right here, my name, you'll find me in just a few seconds. All right, so with that, guys, I think just a few last announcements for us here. This is our GitHub Demo Day, and we do this trying to, I think, close to every single Friday. And this month we have a lot of great things coming, along with my buddy, Mr. Brian Cross, the cat fiend over there. He's going to be doing a demo here in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, Brian. And one of my other colleagues, Mr. Kevin Allwell and Jonathan, they're going to be demoing some of our universe ships for code scanning, secret scanning, Git events in the odd log. So a lot of security-minded things next Friday that I hope you check out as well. All right, everyone. With that, I think we are wrapping up Demo Day. AJ, anything from you, sir, before we close?
No, I think that's been a really packed demo. Like, definitely saw a lot of comments from folks getting really useful information out of it. I mean, it's a ton to cover, obviously, and you know, as folks dig in, I'm sure more questions will pop up. So, in terms of that, like, if they have questions once the stream is done, like, where should folks go?
Yeah, that's a great question right there. So, like I said, feel free to reach out in this repository if you want to start a discussion thread. Awesome new feature in GitHub Discussions, available for public repos. Feel free to start in here if any questions. Pull requests are always welcome, as well as our community post here where you can ask additional questions, follow up, or provide feedback. If there's anyone here interested in using this for GitHub Enterprise for their different companies, feel free to reach out our GitHub Enterprise sales team. I'll provide you the link as well here, and we can definitely talk to you all about pricing or what features you want to use or what do you get with the enterprise solution itself as well. So definitely reach us out, and you can see more information on that on github.com/enterprise.
All right, cool. Thanks, James. See you soon.
Thanks, team. Bye, everyone.
Bye.